Good afternoon. Assalamu alaikum again for those of you who saw me speak this morning. So, before I invite our keynote speaker and then panelists to come in, let me just frame what we hope to achieve in this session. And it's really something very different from everything you've heard over the rest of today. Most of what you heard was about greening the industry, environmental improvements, renewable energy, most of which have, if they're done correctly, a cost-saving element to them, and hence a profit-maximizing element to them. If you do them well, you'll actually make money. On the other hand, what we're going to talk about today are your workers. The workers, the millions of workers, particularly the women, who spend their entire days in your factories stitching and putting together the garments that you then sell in the global market. And I'm going to ask each of you to not think about profits today in this session, but think about humanity. Particularly for those of you who are owners of industries, managers of industries, think about your responsibility to the workers who are earning a pittance. And with the cost of living going up, with the cost of eggs, they can't afford to buy eggs now. Think about them. And think about any sense of responsibility that you might have towards them. So I'm going to appeal to you as human beings, as moral human beings, to your sense of morality, to do something for the workers, because they are the ones who actually, to a very large extent, are responsible for the profits that you make, and the nice food that you eat, and the nice cars that you drive in, and the nice houses that you live in, and for some of you, the houses you have abroad as well. So let's see if we can put on our moral hat, responsibility hat, and think about doing something for the workers themselves. So we have a keynote speech followed by a number of excellent panelists. I'll introduce them when I give them the floor. But let me now invite Mr. Imran Hassan, Head of Climate Justice at Oxfam, to give us the keynote. Imran?
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the floor, and thank you, everybody. Welcome to my presentation. And today I'll be talking on the climate course, and throughout my presentation I'll be focusing on the climate injustice and inequality throughout the journey of mitigation and and throughout the process of NDC and just energy transition. So as you can see, since the dawn of the industrialization, we have put 50% more carbon. That means we have 150% carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and which is really enduring the course of in terms of climate change. And as you can see from the recent research by the NASA, we have in the atmosphere 420 parts per million of carbon dioxide particles, and which is grown from 2002 to 2023 from 365 ppm to 420. It's been done by the NASA research, and the researchers said that to avoid this situation, we need to put our carbon dioxide ppm under 400 in terms of greenhouse gas and 350 in terms of carbon dioxide. And experts also warned that the global greenhouse gas. Thank you. Experts also warn that the global greenhouse gas emission should be halved by 2030, and we need to reach to net zero by 2050 to keep global warming below 1.5 degrees centigrade. And in terms of the UNFCCC Global Synthesis Report, like NDC, National Development Contributions, it says that 60% global increase in emission by 2030, leading to a possible temperature rise of 2.7 degrees Celsius by the end of the century. So, according to another UNEP report, like say the countries deliver on the 250 net zero targets. Even though they are delivering the targets, the temperature will still rise at 1.8 degrees. So in terms of that situation, we need to cut the carbon emission, and we should look forward to the energy transition. So as you can see, in terms of the footprints of the carbon dioxide emission, we can see like the 92% of the carbon dioxide emission has been done by the rich countries whose economy was built on fossil fuels. And if you can see the world's richest 10% people actually produce 50% of the world's emissions, and the 1% of the oldest person actually produce more than twice of the carbon emission that the 50% of the poorest community does. So in terms of Bangladesh has only 0.4% of the world's emission, where the energy sector contributes 93.09 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalents, which is 50%, and there are other sectors for AFOU and waste and IPPO. Okay, so when we're talking about the climate injustice and inequality, it's actually the climate change impact and the inequalities under the vicious cycle, and there are like, I will talk about only two, like assets and income, and in terms of public decision making. So all these three are under the vicious cycle and interact with each other. So if I go, so like climate change, climate injustice and inequality. Sorry, I'm able to change Okay. Thank you for that. So, if you see, like, there has been some research going on, and as you can see, there is a very direct relationship in terms of climate change and migration. I'm talking about climate change and migration because, like, in terms of R&D sectors, the most many of the workers comes due to the climate change induced migration. And as you can see, like from the BCAF data, 3.59% households reported in 2016, and 2.625% households reported migration in 2020, according to the BCAF report. And as per another report by IDMC, it is projected like by 2050, there will be 35 million people under risk of climate change-induced migration. And in terms of the injustice and inequality, I'll just focus on the lower side picture that says, like, for product life cycle, in terms of garments product, during the production, most of the inequality happens. And as per one research from Oxfam, it says that if the buyers invest 1%, invest to the living wages, then it will take only 1% of their supply chain. So you can see here. So this is some data in terms of BBS according to the showing the migration status. And now let me go through the NDC, like National Development Contribution, which actually set course for the mitigation. And there you also see like some sort of exclusion. So in the vicious cycle, I showed like the participation of the people into the decision-making process. Even if it didn't get hindered, then there comes inequality. So in terms of NDC, I showed two kind of figures. One is NDC and another one is people's NDC. That means, like, in terms of determining the course of the mitigation, the people's participation or stakeholder participation should be there. Okay. So for this case, like say, I'll just put one example. While setting the course for the mitigation, like say just energy transition, governments put different ambitions, but there's some sort of contradiction, like the duty of the solar panel and the solar inverter. Actually, together that puts 38% of the import duty. That doesn't go aligned with the NDC ambitions. Like at one point, government saying they're going to cut the emission, and at another point they're raising the import duty. So that's why the consultation should be there with different stakeholders, and that's why we're pointing the term like people's NDC. So overall, the energy transition is much needed in terms of reaching the NDC goals, and definitely it has to be just, and so that the common peoples get benefit out of it. And that I want to put some estimation like 733 million people remain without access to electricity, and estimated 2.4 billion people rely on open fires for cooking, causing 4 million deaths a year through indoor pollution. That also justifies the need for energy transition. So if we go for energy transition, there should be justice lamps, and that's why I put two figures. One is like energy transition without justice lens, and energy transition through the justice lens. There's some sort of differences, and there will have some benefits while there will be just energy transition. So, as per one research, it shows that there requires 4 core justice principles to make energy transition a just energy transition. So, one is like recognition-based. That means rights, concerns, and injustice experienced by affected and marginalized economic and social groups are recognized and addressed. Sorry. And another one is procedural justice, which is like affected people have a meaningful stay in the design and implementation of the transition policies and projects. And the third one is distributional justice, which is like fair distribution of the responsibilities, costs, and benefits that the climate and energy transition will bring. And the next one is remedial justice, like in terms of making the energy transition. If there comes any loss, then it should be compensated very well. So in this slide, the transforming energy transition to just energy. Oh, sorry. So this way forward, what should be our way forward? So in terms of ensuring the RMG workers' safety and well-being is important. Like while we are trying to just energy transition, we see or we foresee some sort of inequalities and injustice. So we should be addressing that to finally attain the climate justice. Like as I previously said, most Bangladesh RMG workers are climate displaced and living in urban hotspots. And the second one is human rights. Like as we all know that working in the garment sector is causes some sort of incidents like Rana Plaza and Tazrin fire hazard. So human rights should be ensured, and gender equity also needs to be addressed. And finally, the accountability of the buyers as they sign UN Fashion Charter. So another way forward is like promoting industrial sustainability and climate justice. Just to say, we need to promote just energy transition and support to the most socially and economically vulnerable worker. And I always say the people's NDC needs to be introduced to attain climatic and economic vulnerability. To eradicate climate vulnerability. So we need to focus on how we can promote industrial sustainability and climate justice. So thank you everyone.
Thank you very much, Imran, for that excellent run through the issues that we are going to discuss. So we have 4 very distinguished panelists whom I'm going to give the floor for 5 minutes each to tell us about their own perspectives on these issues, if they're doing something, what is it they're doing, if they're planning to do something, what is it they're planning to do? And then after we've done one round, hopefully we have a few more minutes to do a bit more collective strategizing. So the first panelist is Mr. Abdul Rahim Khan, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Commerce. Mr. Khan? Mr. Khan. Sorry. Change ke sama kyun bola nahi? Please, can the organizers tell me who is Let me move to Seema Joshi, who is with Fashion and IT. Seema?
Sure, thank you very much. Thank you for to Oxfam, primarily for inviting me to speak at this conference. My name is Seema. I am the Fashion Campaigns Director at an organization called Stand.Earth. Stand.Earth is a social environmental campaigning organization, primarily based in North America, and our role is really to push for and to support, advocate for a fair and just decarbonization process in the fashion industry. So, and this will lead to your question. So, as a not-for-profit organization, one of the main challenges that we see in the fashion industry, of course, is actually there's a lack of transparency in the industry itself. And transparency, I've often been in conversations where people say, well, why does it matter? Why do brands need to disclose their supply chains and who their suppliers are? Why do brands need to disclose the human rights impacts and risks in their supply chain? Well, why do they need to disclose the environmental risks and impacts? And the key point here is that actually there are a few reasons why companies need to do this globally. And one of them is that actually there are international standards that say that businesses have a responsibility to respect human rights. And that's well codified, within the United Nations. It was globally approved in 2011. And then since then, we have a similar type of international standard that's been approved by other, multilateral organizations such as the OECD, which I know Bangladesh is not a member of, but many of the home countries of brands are. And even now, what you have, which I'm sure will be spoken about, you have emerging regulations and legislations that are calling for companies to implement due diligence, to put in place steps that shows how human rights are being protected, respected, and mitigated once harms occur. So this is really important because this will, I believe, as we move forward, we are at a moment where there will be transformation, across businesses and in the fashion industry specifically, brands, because they will be held to account now for actions in their supply chain. So instead of seeing the transparency leads to accountability, but we need to see this as an opportunity. And really the opportunity here is that for the fashion industry, as we in our organization, on our team, are pushing for brands to start to disclose and publish a pathway towards an equitable decarbonization, what that will lead to is a shift in, we're hoping it will lead to a shift in power and a use of brand influence to basically, in producing these pathways, to create a sense of involvement of all relevant stakeholders and in a sense of, let's say, shared responsibilities. It was mentioned earlier today. And when we have a pathway that is disclosed and produced, where targets are jointly set, where challenges are identified and how challenges will be addressed are captured within that, it provides a good opportunity to bring the rights and the needs of workers up front. So it's not the rights, opportunities, livelihoods of women who are working in factories and in the supply chain are no longer an afterthought, but are actually being proactively identified, and a course of action is being identified right from the beginning. So in our work, just to wrap up, climate and human rights are hand in hand. We are seeing in the recent study that was published that workers will face more extreme heat, more flooding, in places like Bangladesh. But this is not just an issue in Bangladesh, it's a global issue. And yeah, I think that we have the sort of framework that is actually making the point that collective action is needed urgently, and transparency will support that.
Thank you very much, Seema. I'd like to invite Edwin Kokok from the European Union delegation. You have a microphone there?
This one works. So thank you so much for having me here, and I'm really impressed by today's event, and I think it's very special that there is an event organized by the ready-made garment industry focusing on climate change, both on how to reduce emissions, but also on how to become more resilient, and what we are discussing now, how to make it more just and to look after your people. And this is actually in our European policy. So I'm from the European Union. We have the European Green Deal, which sees the green transition as also an economic business model. We need to do it to avoid the impacts of climate change, but we also consider that this is the future and the way forward, and the more we are front runners, the more we will be competitive. So we see this as a business model, but we also realize that there will be winners in this European Green Deal, but also that not everybody will win. There are some people who are depending on the fossil fuel industry, who are living in regions where there is less sun or less wind, and therefore in our European Green Deal, which is at the core of our domestic policies now, but also our external policies, so also our cooperation with Bangladesh, we realize that we need to take care of those people that otherwise risk to be left behind, and that's what we call the just transition. So in all our policies, we also think about how to ensure that nobody is left behind and that no place is left behind. And I'm here now for a month in Bangladesh, and I've attended several workshops, one on several events, one on a closing event, also together with the Honorable Professor, where such a group that we discussed were the climate migrants that need to leave locations in Bangladesh that are under high impacts from climate change. They often leave they migrate to cities where they end up in slums with often miserable conditions, and there again they risk to need to migrate again. And the Honorable Professor indicated that cities should become more migrant friendly, and this is actually also something I think what the industry can think about. If you are near cities and there are people migrated from other parts of Bangladesh, they actually can be seen as a potential workforce that can be trained and skilled. One last thing, and that's also linking to what you said. In Europe, there is an enormous pressure on companies to become more responsible, socially responsible, and also environmentally responsible. And this has resulted in the European Commission coming with a proposal for a directive for corporate responsibility, trying to harmonize, because now each buyer has its own requirements and conditions, trying to harmonize and put more clarity in what we consider responsible behavior. And I think this is also an important element of what you are discussing today, how to have a more common understanding on what is responsible business in the area of gender issues, climate migration, healthcare, creating a future, creating certainty for your people. Yes, so in Europe we are heavily discussing this. The proposal is now with the European Parliament and with the Council of the European Union, And I think this will also be a very relevant discussion for the garment industry all over the world, including in Bangladesh. Back to you. No.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Edwin. Now let me invite Mr. Fazli Shamim Hassan, who is the Managing Director of Fatullah Apparels Limited. Fazli?
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to give thanks to Mustafiz and Bangladesh Apparel Exchange for arranging such timely issues, the climate change and just transition, because these are burning issues and it will be the main focus for the future of business, I think. But as Mr. Imran presented a paper, there I've seen that in just transition, one of the main pillar of just transition is the inclusiveness. But I think it is not really focused or really addressed in when we make laws in European Union. I mean, if I said that already German government have due diligence law, HRDD law, European Union already have the Green Deal, and they have some guideline which is already in the parliament. Because most vulnerable people are actually the workers of Bangladesh. Is not because though they are not the responsible for this climate change, they are not the responsible for this carbon emission, but they are in the most vulnerable scenario, because you know that Bangladesh is a area where we are in really in threat for the climate change issues. We are working on it from the manufacturer side, from the brand side, from the government side, but not everything is aligned. Like our government is working for the easy goal, they are working for the environmental issue, but as he mentioned rightly, that we have around 30%, even in some parts we have 56% tax for the solar item. In DC cable it's 56%. So it's not aligned. Some people are telling, okay, we should go for the more greener energy, but there is again tax. As we are supposed to give some subsidy for the green energy, there is no subsidy, but even there is more tax on this issue. So the policy and the goal is not aligned. Even same goes for the brands. They talk more and more about sustainable product, but they are not ready to pay for it. But everything is cost. So actually, we are talking a lot about these issues, but we are not working in the, I think we are not working 100% for the right direction. But we are the sufferer. I mean, we means, of course, our people, our workers, they are in most vulnerable situation because they are from the rural area. And as everybody knows that most of the area is beside the rivers. So for these issues, they will be fastly affected people. And that's why the migration is too high from the rural area to urban area. So my belief is that it's now time to act properly. And the main work should be done at the top of the pyramid, like end consumer. One thing I want to just mention, I want to take 2 minutes time, that we always start from the brands, but brands is not in the top of pyramid. The end consumer actually in the top of the pyramid. So until the end consumer mindset has changed, brand have not must to do. Because if some brands goes for the sustainable product, sustainable fashion, then other brand might not. So people will, change their buying practice and go to the another brands or buyer to, buy more. So they will lose their business. So until the end consumer mindset is changed, they care really for the environment, inclusiveness, fair buying practice, which is the pillars of just transition. So until they don't care, I think it's very difficult from the bottom of us, bottom of the people where we are, it's difficult to address these issues. So we start to talk about all these things, but I think now it's time to make more awareness to the end consumer, those who actually lives in the Western world or the developed countries to them. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Excellent suggestions. Now let me invite Mr. Zubaidur Rahman, who is the head of media communications, stakeholder engagement at RMG Sustainability Council. Mr. Zubaidur Rahman.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Bangladesh Climate Action Forum and Oxfam for inviting us. My name is Zubaidur Rahman and I work for RMG Sustainability Council, in short RSC. So I will start with a very short story. One of our factory colleagues, her name is Salma. She used to live in Kurigram, and one fine morning, her family lost her house due to the flash flood in the Brahmaputra, and they had nothing, and they migrated to Dhaka. One of her cousins was working in one of the garments in Savar, and she offered her a job in that factory. So when she came in Dhaka, she started working in one of the factories, and one day there was a big accident, you know, the Rana Plaza and Tazreen, and her cousin died in that accident. And Salma thought, what to do? Should I stay here in Dhaka? I see my sister died, but she could not go back because she didn't have any house. And here comes the moral obligation of the RMG factory owners and the whole supply chain, the brands and all. And from there, Accord was born, and later RMG Sustainability Council was born. And we look after this safety aspect of the RMG factory. RSC has been working with more than 1,880 factories in Bangladesh. Almost all of them produce clothing for the European market. So our first mandate is to make the RMG factory safe so that we don't see any cousins of Salma or any Salma's cousin dying in the workplace. So that's what we are doing. We are ensuring that the factories that produce clothing for the European market and other markets, they remain safe in their workplace. So initially, our first phase is to make the RMG factory safe in Bangladesh. We have the second phase, which is called key phase. So once we are done with the initial inspection and remediation, we will start helping the factories so that they can maintain the basic safety and life standard in the factories. And then comes the environmental sustainability. RSC, as a safety monitoring agency, hasn't started working on the environmental aspect, but it's in our mind because we are seeing that many of our covered factories, once they have done 100% remediation, they started thinking about this. And this is from their own side. I mean, they themselves started thinking about it. And many, I mean, we have a number of green factories in Bangladesh, and that did not happen in one day. So environmental sustainability is something that we'll be working on, and we have started working with Oxfam, we have started working with GIZ and other actors who can help us to understand so that we bring the environmental aspect in our SOPs so that environmental sustainability and security becomes part of our USP. So I stop here now. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. So thank you to all the panelists for excellent suggestions. Before we close and I hand over to Mahmouda Sultana to give the vote of thanks, let me pick up on two things that were said today and see whether we can formulate some thinking about taking it forward. The first one is about getting all the actors together in Bangladesh, the government, the factory owners, the workers, the buyers, and donor partners, and see whether there is something that we can collectively agree on as a forward pathway to build resilience of the factory workers. Okay, this is workers. This is really aimed at helping them, recognizing that they are going to be very badly hit from climate change, like Salma was already hit in Kurigram. I think that's a very positive step that we can take. I want to ask the organizers to think about convening a small roundtable with the right authorities and people to take that forward. The second one is to pick up on the suggestion that was made about the ultimate consumers and to think about how we can create the ultimate consumer. All right? And let me just share an idea. I'm not sure if how many people here are aware. There was a Swedish teenager called Greta Thunberg. How many people have heard the name Greta Thunberg? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, quite a few people. Greta Thunberg, a number of years ago, when she was a school child, she took every Friday off from school. And she had a placard which she sat with in front of the parliament in Stockholm every Friday, all by herself, saying, I'm going on strike for climate action. People must do something. All on herself, by herself. And then soon others started gathering. And now, that movement, it's called Fridays for Future, is millions of school kids all over the world, including in Bangladesh. Every Friday, they do something. Right? And they have different themes of each Friday. Let us think of engaging with them. They're very big in Europe, by the way. So we can look at the European kids and see whether we can make one of their Fridays buy a socially just and environmentally just garment from Bangladesh. So we produce it, you produce it, we give it to them, they buy it at a premium. They all acknowledge they will pay an extra euro or 50 cents or however much extra for that product. They wear it and they go on their strike. If we can do it in the next 2 months, then the Conference of Parties is coming up in Dubai in December. It would be a very powerful, consumer-oriented movement that we can initiate from here. So if anybody's interested in exploring that, I'd be very happy to talk to you. So with that, please give a hand to all of our panelists. Excellent discussion. Let me now hand over to Mahmouda Sultana.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
So I would like to thank all our distinguished panelists for your evidence-based points you have brought up here to discuss about this just transition and then resilience and equity. So I would just like to add 1 or 2 points that actually whatever you have said, I would like to build on that. So workers' voice is very important throughout the discussions. Like when we are talking about the energy transition, still we are talking about factory level, policy levels, buyer levels, and the consumer levels, not really looking at that what workers are thinking about it. So, and then relating to Seema, what you were talking about this, the transparency and accountability, and actually we should have some transparency accountability even to the workers also. So yes, I think this should be a good platform like where we can bring workers, buyers, consumers, policymakers, R&D owners, and also the other actors like Oxfam, ActionAid, or maybe some other organizations are working on that. So let's break the silo and start talking to each other, and then I think that collective movement can give us a good result. So that's one key action point we would like to propose and we take forward. The second one is actually through this collective platform, maybe we can think through that how we can hold accountable this climate financing mechanism globally and the national level. And then how the people's NDC movement we can strengthen. And last but not the least, this climate justice, gender justice, worker rights, living wage campaign, all these are actually interrelated. So let's not keep silo and breaking the silo and bring all the issues together and go forward. So I should stop here and thank you for all for having us here and then for your kind listening and hopeful that together we'll achieve one day. Thank you.